The conference hall stretched wide enough to hold 300 beings from across the known galaxy. Ambassador Daniel Reed adjusted his collar and tried not to stare at the creature sitting 2 seats away. It had 6 eyes and skin that changed colors every few seconds. After 2 years working with alien species, he still found himself amazed by the diversity of life in the universe. High Arbiter Kulon rose from the central platform. His 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of welcome. The reptilian leader's scales reflected the light from the massive viewing windows behind him. Beyond that glass, the planet Tarn 5 rotated slowly, its purple oceans visible from orbit. "Honored delegates," Kulon's voice boomed through the translation devices everyone wore. "Today we announce the Centennial Beast Games. For 10,000 years, our civilizations have gathered to celebrate the strength and majesty of our home worlds. Each species brings forth their apex predator. These magnificent creatures compete in trials of survival, intelligence, and combat." Daniel leaned forward. He had heard rumors about this event, but never imagined Earth would receive an invitation. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. They were still considered newcomers, barely worth noticing among civilizations that had been traveling the stars for millennia. "The winning species receives significant advantages," Kulon continued. "Trade routes, territorial rights, and most importantly, the respect of the entire galaxy. These prizes remain for 100 years, until the next games begin." A massive hologram appeared above the center of the room. It showed creatures that Daniel could only describe as nightmares. One resembled a bear mixed with a scorpion, covered in armor plates that gleamed like metal. Another looked like a snake but with legs and wings, its fangs dripping with something that burned holes in the ground where it landed. Lord Breskin stood up without waiting for permission to speak. The Tarnese warriors species had won the last 3 competitions, and everyone knew it. His pride radiated from every gesture. "The Tarnese Empire will once again prove our superiority. Our spine renders are unmatched in strength, speed, and ferocity. They have crushed every challenger for 3 centuries. Polite applause rippled through the chamber. Daniel noticed it was more fearful than enthusiastic. The Tarnese had used their century of advantages to expand their territory and dominate trade negotiations. Other species resented their power but could do nothing about it. Kulon's expression remained neutral. "All council members in good standing may enter a champion. The Volmari have confirmed their Void Stalkers will compete. The Greneth bring their Titan Beetles. The Solmar have registered their Stormworms." He paused and looked directly at Daniel. "And we extend an invitation to humanity. Earth may send a representative creature if they wish." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates turned to stare at Daniel. Some looked curious, others amused. Breskin laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The humans?" Breskin's voice carried contempt. "The species of soft flesh and weak predators? What will they bring, a pet?" More laughter joined his. "Perhaps one of their dogs? I have seen the files. Earth's most dangerous creatures are jokes compared to true apex predators." Daniel felt heat rise in his face. He wanted to defend his homeworld, but Breskin wasn't entirely wrong. Earth's predators had evolved in isolation, never competing against species from other planets. A grizzly bear seemed terrifying on Earth, but compared to a 15-foot-tall spine render covered in biological armor, it would be like bringing a knife to a gunfight. Still, Daniel stood. Protocol demanded it. Earth accepts the invitation. We are honored to participate in this ancient tradition. Kulon nodded approvingly, but Daniel saw something else in the Arbiter's expression. Pity, maybe? Or concern that Earth was about to humiliate itself in front of the entire galaxy. "Excellent," Kulon said. "The rules are simple but strict. Each creature must survive various planetary environments. They will hunt designated prey. They will face challenges designed to test their adaptability and intelligence. Finally, the strongest will compete in non-lethal combat. The last creature standing wins glory for their home world." Breskin spoke again, his voice smooth with false courtesy. "I look forward to seeing what Earth brings. It will be educational for the humans to witness true predators. Perhaps they will learn humility." He turned to face Daniel directly. "No shame in losing, Ambassador. Some species are simply not meant for greatness." The session ended shortly after. Delegates filed out, already forming betting pools and discussing strategies. Daniel remained in his seat, his mind racing. He pulled out his communication device and began composing a message to Earth's Xenobiology Committee. How did you tell scientists they needed to find a creature capable of competing against monsters from a dozen different worlds? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Earth had lions, tigers, crocodiles, bears, all impressive by human standards. All probably inadequate for this competition. Humans had never needed to evolve creatures to fight aliens. Earth's predators had developed to hunt other Earth animals on a single planet with specific conditions. But backing out now would be worse than losing. The galaxy would see humanity as cowards. Trade negotiations would suffer. Other species would view Earth as weak, vulnerable, not worth respecting. Daniel had no choice. Earth needed to send something, even if that something got eliminated in the first round. He finished the message and sent it. Somewhere on Earth, scientists were about to receive the most unusual request in human history. Find them a monster. Find something that could stand against creatures from worlds humans had never imagined. Find it fast because the games would begin in 60 days. Daniel looked out at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere among those lights was Earth, his home, a small blue planet with creatures that had never been tested against the galaxy's worst. He hoped they understood what they were getting into. He hoped even more that Earth had something, anything, that wouldn't make humanity look foolish. The games were coming. Earth needed a champion, and Daniel had no idea what that champion would be. Dr. Patricia Young stared at the holographic displays floating above her desk. Each one showed a different predator from Earth, frozen in mid-action. A grizzly bear catching salmon, a saltwater crocodile launching from water, a great white shark breaching with a seal in its jaws. All impressive. All probably doomed. The committee room in Geneva had been full of shouting for the past 3 hours. 18 scientists, 5 military advisors, and 2 politicians all had opinions about which creature should represent Earth. None of them agreed. Patricia rubbed her temples and wished for quiet. The polar bear makes the most sense, Dr. Robert Lynn argued for the 3rd time. Largest land predator on Earth. Can weigh over 1,500 pounds. Natural armor of fat and fur. Perfect for the cold environment trials we know they will face. Captain Roy Hansen, the military liaison, shook his head. Too specialized. You said it yourself, cold environments. What happens in the heat trials? In the jungle trials? It will collapse from heat exhaustion. Then the crocodile, someone else suggested. Ancient predator. Unchanged for millions of years because the design is perfect. Bite force that can crush bone. Armor plating. Patricia stood up. Everyone stopped talking. She had the most field experience with dangerous animals, having spent 20 years studying predator behavior across 6 continents. When she spoke, people listened. You are all thinking too big, she said quietly. Size is not everything. The alien creatures will outweigh anything we bring by hundreds, maybe thousands of pounds. We cannot win with size. We need to win with something else. What else is there? Roy asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Patricia smiled and brought up a new image. The room went silent. Then someone laughed. Then everyone was talking at once, most of them angry. The hologram showed a small mammal, maybe 2 feet long, with black and white fur. It looked almost cute, like something you would see in a children's zoo. Certainly not something you would send to fight alien monsters. A honey badger? Dr. Lynn's voice rose with disbelief. You want to send a 25-pound weasel to compete against creatures that could eat it in one bite? Yes, Patricia said simply. She brought up more images. Watch this. The first video showed a honey badger attacking a beehive. Thousands of bees swarmed it, stinging again and again. The badger ignored them completely, ripping apart the hive and eating honey while bees covered its face. The second video showed a honey badger fighting 3 lions. The lions retreated, not because they were hurt, but because they got tired of fighting something that refused to die. The third video showed a honey badger getting bitten by a puff adder, one of Africa's deadliest snakes. The badger stumbled around for a few minutes, then went to sleep. 2 hours later, it woke up and ate the snake that had bitten it. They have resistance to venom that would kill animals 10 times their size, Patricia explained. Their skin is so thick and loose that predators cannot get a good grip. When a lion bites them, they can twist around inside their own skin and bite back. They have been documented fighting Cape buffalo, leopards, even young elephants. But the size, Roy protested weakly, is irrelevant, Patricia said firmly. Honey badgers do not understand fear. They do not understand surrender. Their brain chemistry is different from almost any other mammal. When threatened, they become more aggressive, not less. They have been recorded raiding military camps, breaking into research stations, and attacking vehicles. One honey badger held up traffic for 6 hours because it decided to fight the cars. She pulled up research documents. Their metabolism is incredibly efficient. They can survive in deserts, forests, grasslands, mountains. They eat anything. Meat, plants, insects, fruit. They are problem solvers. Videos show them using tools, working together to break into enclosures, learning from experience. The room had gone quiet again. People were actually watching now, seeing the videos play out. A honey badger climbing a tree to raid a bird nest. Another digging through solid concrete to reach food. Another fighting off a pack of wild dogs while protecting its meal. Most importantly, Patricia said, they never quit. Never. There are no documented cases of a honey badger surrendering or fleeing unless physically unable to move. They fight until they win or until they cannot physically continue, and even then, they rest and come back for more. Dr. Lin studied the data. The venom resistance is remarkable. If the alien creatures use poison or toxins, this could be a significant advantage. The environmental adaptability is impressive, another scientist admitted. They live in 30 different countries across 2 continents. That suggests they can handle varied conditions. Roy Hansen looked skeptical but interested. What about intelligence? The trials will test more than just fighting ability. Patricia showed video of a honey badger escaping from an enclosure. It used a rake as a ladder, pushed a rock to reach higher ground, and manipulated a lock mechanism. Smarter than most people realize. They learn, they adapt, they solve problems. Unlike many predators that rely on instinct, honey badgers seem to think through challenges. This is insane, someone muttered. We will be the laughingstock of the galaxy. We will be that anyway, Roy said quietly. Look at the competition. We cannot match them in size or strength, but maybe, just maybe, we can match them in spirit. He looked at Patricia. You really think this creature can compete? I think it will never stop trying, Patricia answered. And sometimes that matters more than size. The vote took another hour. In the end, 15 voted for the honey badger. 3 abstained. Nobody voted for anything else. Not because they believed it would win, but because they could not think of anything better. Patricia sent the confirmation to Ambassador Reed. Earth's champion had been chosen. Now she needed to select the specific animal. She had been studying one particular male for 3 years, raised in a wildlife sanctuary after being rescued as a baby, fully grown, healthy, and even by honey badger standards, absolutely fearless. His name was Brutus, and he was about to become the most famous animal in galactic history. The transport ship touched down on the orbital station 3 weeks before the games would begin. Brutus sat in his containment unit, completely calm. The journey from Earth had taken 15 days. He had spent most of it sleeping and eating the food provided. Patricia had made sure he was comfortable and healthy. She knew what was coming would test him beyond anything Earth could offer. The loading dock was full of activity. Creatures from a dozen worlds arrived in specialized transport containers. Some required refrigeration. Others needed heated environments. A few came in tanks of liquid because they could not breathe oxygen. Each container was larger than a human vehicle. The sounds were incredible, roars and screeches and calls that no human had ever heard before. Then someone noticed Earth's container. It was small, barely the size of a closet. Simple glass on one side so observers could see inside. No special environmental controls. No warning labels about danger or toxicity. One of the Tarnese handlers pointed and laughed. That is the human entry? I thought it was someone's pet carrier. Word spread quickly. Delegates and handlers gathered around. Inside the modest container, Brutus sat grooming his fur. He weighed 25 pounds. The creature in the next container, a Volmari voidstalker, weighed over 600 pounds and had acid dripping from its fangs. Lord Breskin arrived with his personal entourage. His spine-render Gorath traveled in a reinforced container the size of a small house. Through the thick glass, observers could see the beast inside, 15 feet tall when standing upright, covered in overlapping plates that looked like biological armor, claws that could tear through metal, eyes that tracked movement with predatory intelligence. Breskin studied Brutus for a long moment. Then he threw his head back and laughed. This is what Earth sends? This tiny creature? He turned to Ambassador Reed, who had come to oversee Brutus's arrival. Ambassador, I thought your species had pride. This is an embarrassment. Reed kept his expression neutral. Appearances can be deceiving, Lord Breskin. Not this deceiving, Breskin replied. He gestured to Gorath's container. My champion is a perfect predator, evolved on a world where only the strongest survived. Bred for combat over 10,000 generations. What is that thing? It looks like it should be running from predators, not fighting them. A crowd had formed. News drones hovered above, broadcasting across the galaxy. Reed could imagine the commentary. Humans foolishly enter impossible competition. Earth's creature looks like someone's pet. Betting pools would be forming already, and Earth's odds would be terrible. Patricia stood beside Reed, calm despite the mockery. She had expected this. Lord Breskin, she said politely, would you like to know what my research shows? Research? Breskin seemed amused. What is there to research about that? Honey badgers have been documented fighting creatures 50 times their size, Patricia said. They have resistance to venom that would kill most mammals in minutes. Their skin is thick enough to resist bites from large predators, but most importantly, they have something your spine render might not understand. And what is that? They do not know how to quit. Breskin stared at her. Then he laughed again. Bravery without strength is just stupidity, Doctor. Enjoy watching your creature fail. He walked away, his entourage following. The environmental trials began 2 days later. Arena Master Feln, a neutral observer from a species that did not compete, explained the first challenge. All creatures will be placed in a simulated frozen tundra. Temperature will drop to 40 degrees below zero. Food will be limited. The trial lasts 72 hours. Creatures that cannot survive will be removed and forfeit the competition. 23 creatures entered the frozen zone. The massive predators struggled immediately. Their size worked against them. Large bodies needed more food to maintain temperature. The spine render Gorath spent enormous energy just keeping warm. It had to hunt constantly, burning calories as fast as it consumed them. Brutus took a different approach. He dug a burrow within the first hour, creating insulation from the frozen wind. He caught small prey efficiently, eating quickly and conserving energy. When food became scarce, he entered a state of reduced activity, lowering his metabolism. Other creatures panicked as the temperature dropped further. Brutus simply curled up in his burrow and waited. By the end of 72 hours, 5 creatures had been removed for medical reasons. They had burned through their energy reserves and were approaching dangerous levels of exhaustion. Brutus emerged from his burrow looking slightly thinner but perfectly healthy. The second trial was volcanic. Extreme heat, toxic gases, and unstable ground. The massive creatures struggled to find stable footing. The Titan beetles, with their heavy armor plating, absorbed too much heat and became dangerously overheated. The void stalkers could not filter the toxic air through their respiratory systems. Brutus covered his face with volcanic mud, creating a primitive filter. He stayed in underground tunnels where the air was clearer and the temperature lower. When he needed to cross open ground, he moved in short bursts, never exposing himself longer than necessary. It was not elegant, but it worked. Arena Master Feln reviewed the results with growing interest. The Earth creature demonstrates remarkable adaptability. Its size, which appeared to be a weakness, actually provides advantages in resource management and environmental navigation. The third trial was jungle. Dense vegetation, camouflaged prey, hidden predators. The large creatures crashed through undergrowth, alerting everything to their presence. Brutus moved through the environment like he belonged there. He raided nests in trees, dug for insects, confronted a local equivalent of a venomous snake and survived the bite with no ill effects. Galactic commentators started paying attention. The Earth entry, initially dismissed as a joke, has survived all 3 environmental trials. Its performance suggests Earth's predators evolved in unusually challenging conditions. By the end of the environmental phase, only 18 creatures remained. Brutus ranked 5th overall, not because he was the strongest or fastest, but because he was consistent. He never wasted energy. He adapted to every challenge. And he never, not once, showed fear or hesitation. In the viewing areas, delegates who had mocked Earth's entry grew quiet. Breskin watched the final environmental results with narrowed eyes. Lucky, he muttered. Wait until the combat trials. Size will matter then. But Patricia, watching from Earth, smiled. The combat trials were exactly where honey badgers excelled. Because fighting was not about size. It was about refusing to lose. The grand arena could hold 500,000 spectators. Every seat was filled. Billions more watched across the galaxy through live broadcasts. The environmental trials had been interesting, but everyone knew the truth. Real champions were decided through combat. Strength against strength. Predator against predator. Arena Master Feln stood at the center platform, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the massive space. The combat trials will now begin. Rules are simple. Fights continue until one creature submits, retreats, or becomes unable to continue. Medical teams stand ready. Lethal force is prohibited and will result in immediate disqualification. Brutus waited in his preparation chamber. He could hear the crowd, feel the vibrations through the floor. Patricia had explained what would happen, though he could not understand her words. But honey badgers did not need explanations. They understood one thing perfectly. When threatened, attack. When attacked, fight back. Never stop until the threat was gone. The first match was announced. Earth's entry versus the Greneth Titan beetle. The arena floor was the size of a football field, covered in natural terrain. Rocks, small trees, uneven ground. The Titan beetle entered from the opposite side. It stood 4 feet tall and stretched nearly 8 feet long. Its shell was a dark blue-black color, harder than steel. Mandibles as long as a human forearm clicked together with enough force to snap bone. Brutus entered from his side. The size difference was absurd. The beetle outweighed him by more than 20 times. The crowd noise changed from anticipation to laughter. Even now, after surviving the environmental trials, many still saw Earth's champion as a joke. The beetle charged immediately. It was not a fast creature, but its momentum was terrifying. Anything in its path would be crushed. Brutus did not run. He waited until the last moment, then dodged to the side with speed that surprised everyone watching. The beetle crashed past, its mandibles snapping on empty air. Before the beetle could turn, Brutus attacked. He went for the joints where the legs connected to the body. His teeth, designed to crack bones and tear through tough hide, found the softer tissue between armor plates. The beetle screeched, a sound like tearing metal. It tried to shake Brutus off, but he held on. The beetle rolled, using its weight to try to crush him. Brutus was thrown clear, tumbling across the ground. Any normal animal would have been stunned. Brutus got up and immediately charged back in. No hesitation. No fear. For 15 minutes, the pattern repeated. The beetle would attack with overwhelming force. Brutus would dodge, counterattack vulnerable points, get thrown off, and immediately come back for more. The beetle's movements grew slower. Its screeches became more desperate. Brutus never slowed down. Finally, the beetle retreated toward the exit gate. It had had enough. This small creature would not stop, would not tire, would not be intimidated. Arena Master Feln declared Brutus the winner. The crowd's laughter had turned to stunned silence. The second match came 3 days later. Earth's entry versus the Volmari Voidstalker. The Voidstalker was a different kind of nightmare. Sleek, fast, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. It could spit acid with accuracy up to 30 feet. Its hunting strategy was simple. Blind prey with acid, then move in for the kill. It had won its first match in under 2 minutes. The match began. The stalker sprayed acid immediately, covering the area where Brutus had been standing. But Brutus had already moved, reading the stalker's body language. Honey badgers had evolved, avoiding spitting cobras. This was not so different. The stalker tried again. This time, some acid caught Brutus on his shoulder. His fur smoked. The skin beneath turned red and angry. The crowd expected him to retreat, to seek medical attention. Instead, Brutus accelerated toward the stalker. Pain meant nothing to a creature whose brain chemistry was built differently from normal mammals. The stalker was fast, but Brutus was smaller and more agile. He closed the distance in seconds. Before the stalker could spit again, Brutus was on it, climbing up its body like a tree. The stalker thrashed wildly, slamming itself against the ground. Brutus held on, his claws digging into the gaps between scales. He reached the throat and bit down. Not hard enough to kill, that would be disqualified, but hard enough that the stalker understood the threat. The creature tried everything. It rolled, jumped, sprayed acid backward. Brutus ignored it all. His fur was smoking in several places now. Burns covered his skin. He did not let go. 20 minutes into the match, the stalker submitted. It went still, a universal signal of surrender. Brutus released it and dropped to the ground. Medical teams rushed in for both creatures. The stalker needed treatment for bite wounds. Brutus needed treatment for acid burns, but he walked to his exit gate on his own, while the stalker had to be carried. Commentators across the galaxy scrambled to explain what they were seeing. The Earth creature appears to have an abnormal pain tolerance. More than that, it seems to interpret pain as motivation to attack rather than retreat. This is highly unusual among predatory species. Dr. Patricia Young, interviewed from Earth, explained, "Honey badgers evolved on a planet where retreat often meant death. Predators that gave up were eliminated from the gene pool. The ones that survived were the ones that kept fighting no matter what. After millions of years, that became instinct." In the viewing section for delegates, conversations had changed. No one was laughing now. Lord Breskin sat forward in his seat, studying footage of both matches. His spine-render Gorath had also won its first 2 matches, but those victories had come through overwhelming force. Brutal, quick, decisive, this was different. The Earth creature won through attrition. It survived what should have stopped it, then kept coming. It was like watching water wear down stone. Not through single powerful blows, but through constant, relentless pressure. "This changes nothing," Breskin said to his advisors. "Gorath is 3 tons of pure predator. That small creature cannot hurt him, cannot even reach vital areas. Size will matter in the final matches." But his voice lacked its earlier certainty, because everyone watching had seen something that made them uncomfortable. They had seen a creature that did not understand fear, did not recognize pain as a reason to stop, and did not have the good sense to know when it was beaten. The semifinals were next. 4 creatures remained: the Tarnisi spine-render Gorath, a Solmar storm worm, a Grenith champion crusher, and Brutus. The galaxy waited to see what would happen when unstoppable met unmovable. Brutus faced the Solmar storm worm in the semifinals. The creature lived up to its name. 20 feet long, covered in scales that generated electrical charges with wings that could create wind strong enough to knock over vehicles. It flew in circles above the arena, building up energy, while Brutus waited on the ground. The worm dove, releasing a bolt of electricity. Brutus dodged behind a rock formation. The bolt hit stone, shattering it into fragments. The crowd gasped. That kind of power could kill, but the worm had control, keeping the voltage just below lethal levels. Still, getting hit would end the match immediately. Brutus studied the pattern. The worm circled 3 times before diving. It needed time to build charge. During the approach, it could not maneuver quickly. Honey badgers were excellent at pattern recognition. It came from raiding beehives that were guarded differently each time. The next dive came. Brutus waited until the last possible second, then moved. The worm could not adjust its trajectory fast enough. It crashed into the ground, stunned by its own momentum. Before it could recover, Brutus was on it, targeting the wing joints. Flexible membranes, easier to damage than the scaled body. The worm thrashed and took flight again, but one wing was damaged now. Its flight became uneven. Brutus had created an advantage through patience and timing. The match continued for 30 minutes. Each time the worm dove, Brutus evaded and counterattacked. Each exchange left the worm more damaged, more exhausted, more frustrated. Finally, the worm could not fly anymore. It landed heavily and faced Brutus on the ground. In close combat, size became less important. Brutus was faster, lower to the ground, harder to hit. When the worm tried to use electricity at point-blank range, it had to ground itself first. Brutus used those seconds to attack and retreat. The end came when the worm simply ran out of energy. It could not sustain the electrical generation, could not keep up with an opponent that never tired, never slowed, never stopped coming. It retreated to its gate. The semifinal was over. In the other semifinal, Gorath destroyed the Grenith champion crusher in under 5 minutes. The crusher was huge, armored, powerful. Gorath was bigger, faster, and meaner. It was not even close. The Tarnese champion had removed any doubt about its capabilities. Arena Master Feln announced the final match. In 2 days, the championship. Earth's entry, Brutus versus Tarnese champion Gorath. The galaxy went crazy. Betting pools shifted wildly. Some people put money on Brutus out of hope or sentiment. Most bet on Gorath, because they could not imagine any other outcome. The size difference was beyond absurd. Brutus weighed 25 pounds. Gorath weighed 3 tons. The weight ratio was over 200 to 1. Lord Breskin demanded an emergency session with the council. "This is ridiculous. The match cannot be fair when one creature can step on the other. We need size categories, weight classes, something." High Arbiter Kulan listened patiently, then spoke. All creatures passed the same environmental trials. All faced opponents chosen randomly. The rules have not changed in 10,000 years. If size were the only thing that mattered, we would not need competitions. We would simply weigh the creatures and declare the heaviest one champion. But the risk, Breskin protested, is equal for both creatures, Kulon finished. If the Earth creature is destroyed, then it was not worthy. If your champion loses to something so much smaller, then perhaps it is not as superior as you claim. The match will proceed. Breskin left the chamber angry, but he was also worried. He had watched Brutus's matches. The creature did not fight like a normal predator. It fought like something broken, something that could not process normal survival instincts. That kind of opponent was dangerous precisely because it was unpredictable. The day of the final arrived. The arena was beyond capacity. Some species had rented space on orbital platforms just to watch on large screens. This was history. Either the most dominant species in the games would continue their reign, or the galaxy's biggest upset would occur. Gareth entered first. The crowd roared. 3 tons of apex predator, biological armor that had never been breached, claws that could cut through starship hulls, speed that seemed impossible for something so massive, intelligence that showed in its hunting strategies. This was what evolution created when a world had no mercy. Brutus entered from the opposite side. Some people cheered. Many remained silent. A few laughed, but it was nervous laughter. Everyone had seen his previous matches. Everyone knew what he represented. The creature that refused to lose. The match began. Gareth charged immediately, trying to end things fast. Brutus dodged, but barely. The ground shook from Gareth's footsteps. A single hit would end the match. Brutus could not take even one direct blow, but he did not need to. He needed to avoid them. And honey badgers were very good at avoiding things trying to kill them. Gareth swiped with claws that cut through air with audible sound. Brutus ducked under. Gareth tried to bite, jaws that could crush metal. Brutus rolled away. Gareth used his tail as a weapon, a massive club. Brutus jumped over it. For 5 minutes it was just evasion. Brutus did not attack. He learned Gareth's patterns. Speed, reach, recovery time. Everything had a pattern. Everything had a weakness. Then Brutus went on offense. He targeted Gareth's eyes. Not to blind, that might be considered lethal, but to irritate, to distract. His small size became an advantage. He could climb Gareth's body faster than Gareth could react. The massive predator tried to shake him off. Brutus held on with claws designed to dig through hard earth. Gareth slammed himself against the arena walls. Brutus was crushed between armor and stone. He lost his grip, fell to the ground. Any normal creature would have been broken. Brutus got up. His breathing was labored. Ribs probably cracked. He charged back at Gareth. The crowd could not believe what they were watching. Medical teams prepared to intervene, but Brutus kept moving, kept fighting. Gareth landed a glancing blow that sent Brutus tumbling. He got up again. 20 minutes passed. Gareth had barely been touched. Brutus looked like he had been through a war. But something was changing. Gareth was breathing heavily. The constant movement, the endless attacks, the need to track something so small and fast it was exhausting. Brutus found an opening. Gareth's armor had gaps, places where plates met. Behind the jaw, where flexibility was needed, Brutus climbed Gareth's front leg, dodged a bite, and reached that spot. He bit down and held on. Gareth thrashed like nothing the galaxy had seen, but Brutus would not let go.
Gareth tried everything.
He rolled across the ground, crashed into walls, twisted his massive body in ways that should have dislodged any attacker. Brutus held on. His jaws were locked onto the soft tissue behind Gareth's jaw, not hard enough to cause serious injury, hard enough to cause constant, impossible-to-ignore pain. The match entered its second hour. Nothing in Beast Games history had lasted this long. Gareth was exhausted, not from injury but from the sheer energy expenditure of fighting an opponent that gave him nothing to work with. How do you fight something you cannot catch? How do you defeat something that treats pain as motivation? Finally, Gareth did something unprecedented. He stopped. Just stopped moving. Then he walked toward the exit gate. Not quickly, not in panic. Slowly, deliberately. A conscious choice to end the match on his own terms. Arena Master Feln's voice echoed in the stunned silence. Gareth has retreated from the arena. By the rules of the games, this constitutes submission. The winner is Brutus, champion for Earth. The silence lasted 5 seconds. Then the arena erupted. Half the crowd cheered. A quarter sat in shock. The rest argued with neighbors about what they had just witnessed. In the delegate section, Ambassador Reed could not speak, could not process what had happened. Patricia Young, watching from Earth, had tears running down her face. She had believed, but believing and seeing were different things. Brutus had just done the impossible. A 25-pound animal had defeated a 3-ton apex predator, not through luck, not through trickery, through pure, stubborn refusal to give up. Lord Breskin stood frozen in his seat. His advisors said nothing. What was there to say? Gorath had not been injured seriously, had not been beaten in any traditional sense, but he had been exhausted, frustrated, driven to the point where continuing seemed pointless. The small Earth creature would never stop, never. And Gorath, intelligent enough to recognize futility, had chosen to end it. The medical teams reached Brutus first. He finally released his grip on Gorath and stood on shaky legs. His body was covered in bruises and scrapes. Breathing came hard through possibly cracked ribs, but he was conscious, alert, and when a medic approached, Brutus growled. Still ready to fight if needed, they sedated him gently. He had earned rest. As they carried him to the medical center, the crowd's cheering grew louder. This small creature had won hearts across the galaxy, not because he was the strongest, because he represented something every species understood on some level. The will to continue when everything said you should quit. The award ceremony happened 3 days later. Brutus had recovered well. Honey badger healing was almost as remarkable as their pain tolerance. He sat in a specialized platform while High Arbiter Kulon addressed the gathered delegates and the billions watching across the stars. For 10,000 years, we have celebrated strength, Kulon said. We measured victory by size, by power, by dominance. Earth has taught us something important. Strength comes in forms we did not recognize. The will to continue, the refusal to surrender, the ability to adapt, to endure, to persist against impossible odds. He turned to Ambassador Reed. Earth is awarded the century's trade advantages, territorial rights, and the honor of hosting the next games. More importantly, Earth is recognized as a species worthy of deep respect. If their animals possess this spirit, we can only imagine what the humans themselves are capable of. Reed accepted the honors, but his mind was elsewhere. Kulon's final words resonated, what the humans themselves are capable of. Reed thought about Earth's history. Humans had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, plagues that killed millions, and every time they came back, they rebuilt. They continued. Honey badgers were not unique to Earth. They were typical of Earth. The planet was covered in survivors, in creatures that evolution had hammered into shapes that refused to break. Humans were just another example. They looked soft, weak, vulnerable. But appearances were deceiving. Lord Breskin approached Reed after the ceremony. For a moment, Reed prepared for more insults or demands for a rematch. Instead, Breskin bowed slightly. I underestimated your world, Ambassador. I see now why your species survived to reach the stars. May I ask a question? Of course. Your creature, this honey badger, is it considered exceptional among Earth's predators? Reed almost laughed. No, Lord Breskin. It is actually quite common. Earth has bears, big cats, crocodiles, and hundreds of other species. The honey badger is remarkable, but it is not unique in its spirit. Breskin absorbed this information. Then your world produced not one such creature, but many. Our entire planet is populated by survivors, Reed explained. Earth went through periods of mass extinction, ice ages, climate shifts. Only the most adaptable, most determined species survived. After millions of years, that became normal for us. We do not see it as exceptional. It is just how Earth works. Breskin nodded slowly. The Tarnisi would be honored to learn from Earth. Perhaps we have been too focused on breeding for size and strength. Perhaps we neglected breeding for spirit. In the weeks that followed, scientists from across the galaxy requested access to Earth's evolutionary records. They wanted to understand how a single planet produced so many creatures with such remarkable determination. The answer was simple but profound. Earth's history was violent, unstable, and unforgiving. Nice conditions produced comfortable life. Harsh conditions produced survivors. Brutus returned to Earth a hero. He went back to his sanctuary, where he spent his days doing what honey badgers do. Digging, eating, occasionally fighting with keepers who tried to give him medicine. Fame meant nothing to him. He had simply done what came naturally. Fight when challenged. Never quit, survive, but the galaxy had changed. Earth was no longer seen as a minor species of soft creatures. They were recognized as survivors from a world that tested everything. And when the next crisis came, when some new threat emerged, other species found themselves thinking the same thing. What would Earth do? How would these survivors respond? Because if their animals refused to give up against impossible odds, surely the humans themselves carried that same spirit. They were right. Earth had sent its message through a small, stubborn creature with more heart than sense. Never underestimate something just because it looks small, looks weak, looks harmless. Because Earth had proven one thing beyond doubt. Size does not determine strength. Spirit does. And Earth had spirit measured not in pounds or tons, but in the simple refusal to ever surrender.